We're sitting here on the 10th floor that's where the commissioners sit. There's been a view from the 10th floor going down to the staff saying, we don't want this stuff to move forward. And now that's flipped. And you're seeing really enthusiastic engagement from the staff trying to figure out some of these very difficult problems.
Now you have Chair Atkins here. 1 to 10, how confident is Commissioner Peirce feeling about these changes continuing at that pace?
Well, I mean, we're trying to move as quickly as we can. I think this is really an important thing for me to get things done quickly, but also it's something that the administration more generally is interested in moving forward quickly. My views are my own views as a commissioner and not necessarily those of the SEC or my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Peirce, thank you so much for having us.
It's great to be here. It's great to do this in person.
It's strange to do this in person, I think, a little bit, but you know, we've come a long ways, and we took you up on your invitation to come in here. I don't know how many other crypto projects have been doing that, but it seems like a lot more now that you guys have really said, no, we want to talk to you guys and learn about what's going on. So thank you for the invitation.
No, I appreciate you coming in, and I think a lot of other projects are taking us up on it. You can always look at the website and see who's meeting with us. We're trying to keep this as transparent as possible.
I think that was really cool. I didn't actually know about it until after I saw that posting, right after we came out of the meeting. And now I'm going to be checking that more often. But I think that transparency is really cool. But how have you seen the numbers tick up when it comes to that now? Or do people feel more comfortable talking with the crypto?
I mean, I think people do, although there's still a lot of questions about, you know, people are coming to me saying, should we really do this? Do you really want to hear from us? And so, you know, I'm providing a lot of encouragement that people think about it, but also people have to realize that there's a lot that we're trying to deal with right now, and we have to prioritize. And so we might not be able to provide the relief that a particular person wants right away. And I think that's a difficult reality of this. And so people are trying to weigh that consideration as well.
It's kind of like real life though, right?
It is.
And you know, it's been very interesting. I want to say weird, but honestly just kind of very interesting for us in terms of the evolution of when we first met back, as we talked about, when you were basically writing about, hey, here are some ideas that never got the light of day because of the old way of thinking that crypto is bad and, you know, that it can't be used for good. But now, thinking about all the safe harbor potential today with you at the head of the crypto task force, I mean, how are you looking to kind of achieve those early wins?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is a little bit sad, right? Because I think if we had had these conversations 3 years ago, we would be in a very different place, or 5 years ago, we would be in a very different place than we are today, because these things do take time. And so I think what we're trying to do is figure out what we can do right away. And a lot of what we can do right away is just say, these are things that aren't covered. But when we talk about the things that might be within our space, and we're looking at some sort of a safe harbor, something like that could require a rulemaking, and it may take a little bit longer to get in place. So we're trying to, you know, think how can we get that moving as quickly as possible? And, you know, that's one thing that people are focused on, a safe harbor type stuff, but there's a lot also on the regulated intermediary side of things, broker-dealers, investment advisors, ATSs, and so we also want to do things on that side of the house. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are the two areas where we're looking, is there any way we can invite people in as quickly as possible in a way that actually will be better for protection of the marketplace and of retail purchasers of tokens. So that's what I'm hoping, is that we can get some of that done right away, and then that will be the basis for longer term, mm-hmm. more durable solutions, maybe something. I mean, Congress is also working on things in parallel, and I think that's a good thing. But can our work help inform their work?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, being here, it's interesting to see and kind of think about Chair Gensler's pictures on the wall here, kind of looming over us a little bit, which is interesting. Not Chair Atkins on the wall yet, but I think, you know, he's only been here for less than a week. And so one of my questions was going to be how much him being here now, we talked a little bit before in terms of you laying the groundwork, but now he's here. So what has kind of the early days given you in terms of an insight into how things will go now?
Well, I think you saw Chairman Atkins at the first, well, it wasn't the first crypto roundtable, it was his first crypto roundtable on Friday, and he came to express his support for the roundtable and for what we're trying to investigate. And I think that's really helpful, is to see his interest in these issues. He's made it clear that this is a priority for him to try to bring clarity to this space. I think we all expected that, but it's helpful to have him here and have him saying that. He has a lot on his agenda. There are many, many issues that he has to take into account. He's trying to bring in staff, and so he's quite busy. But I think the fact that he has taken the time to put some thought into this area already is a very positive sign. And the fact that he is saying, let's figure out how people can come in and work with us. I think that's a very positive signal.
Has anyone who's ever met with the Crypto Task Force interviewed you before? I thought just
You
occurred
might
to
be
me
the
that
first. You might be
Yeah.
the first.
Because we just got out of
Yeah.
the meeting with the Crypto Task Force, which again, I have to say, as a founder who's been building here in the US for 3 years, it was something that I was not sure a few years ago would ever be possible. But I think it just speaks to kind of the work that you guys with the Crypto Task Force you've already done to kind of write that narrative. And truthfully, personally, I don't think we would have wanted to come in were it not for the invitation from you and kind of all the good work that you've done to build and regulate honestly. I think there are a lot of founders who are just kind of truly like trying to get this done in a way that like is good. So it was really fun to be here, I have to
Well,
say.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I hope they asked you some good questions.
I'm not a lawyer, so a lot of this stuff goes over my head. But I do know in terms of building here, and you were at ETH Denver, that's where I saw you last in person. But, same kind of concept. We have the same legal team working on similar things in terms of bringing co-ops on chain. And from what I gather in terms of what the Crypto Task Force has issued in terms of statements, you did one on meme coins. There were a few others that kind of, aren't the same thing as Congress getting anything done in terms of maybe lasting power. But I assume those are super important for you to kind of establish the new paradigm of, look, here's how we're thinking about things, to give people the transparency, to know which direction to zig or zag, which I think is important.
Yeah, I think some of that early, again, as you say, it's not as durable as Congress doing it, but when we look at our jurisdiction to say some things just aren't within our jurisdiction, that allows us to focus our resources and time. It allows other people to think about, is this something in the security space or not, or can we do this without thinking about the SEC? There might be other rules out there, but I think that's helpful just to get people started. And it's something that we could have done years ago again, and we chose not to. And I think if we had done that, we would be in a different place. So now let's try to get some of that out of the way quickly and see what we can get done. But I think the meetings with folks like you is important too, in helping us think about how should we prioritize, what would be useful to you, actually trying to build something.
Yeah.
What would be useful to you to have, what could prevent you from using a solution that we might develop. And that's why I do urge people to come in, because we don't want to develop a solution just sitting here by ourselves thinking about things. We really need people to say, hey, this is what we could actually use, or this would be totally useless to us because there'd be this other consideration that you haven't thought about.
Yeah, well, I think that's what was so fascinating and honestly really optimistic for me to see in person, was kind of the two-way conversation of, what are you trying to do? How does this fit into what we've already done and our existing rulemaking and legal precedent around, again, co-ops and them being brought on chain, which is what we're trying to do at Coinage and Trustless. And so having this conversation has been really exciting. And I do wonder if kind of the order of operations in some of those statements around meme coins were kind of those low-hanging fruit, to use the word, to kind of show directional movement. And then, no surprise that your friends across the street are trying to work on bigger billion-dollar questions when we're kind of a tiny co-op over here that arguably could be seen as low-hanging fruit, or just important for kind of the builders in the space that aren't in that other, as you've laid out, kind of crypto assets or securities, tokenized securities parts. Seems like a distinction.
Well, I think what you're pointing to is really important, because this is kind of how we go about our work here, which is we look at existing precedent and we say, let's look at this new thing in light of that existing precedent. And that's precedent meaning SEC precedent, but also court precedent. And so then we can build on that. And so I think that that point is important for people to understand. That's how the SEC works, regardless of whether it's digital assets or something else. We work iteratively, and so people should know that if they see something come out from the SEC and they say, hey, we can take it a step further, they can come in and tell us that. That is the way that the securities laws develop, and then Congress can come in and say, okay, we want to take it and we want to make this permanent, but we also maybe want to move things a step forward that's broader than just this incremental move. We want to expand the SEC's jurisdiction, or we want to expand the CFTC's jurisdiction to include this set of things. But there's a lot that we can do before having to rely on that legislation, because there's a lot we can do within our space for stuff that's clearly within our jurisdiction. And I think Chairman Atkins said something similar recently as well. We can use the jurisdiction we have, staying within that jurisdiction, we can do a lot.
Well, let me ask you too, because I think back to you, again, we had this conversation with you in December around how quick is all of this going to happen? And you said, it's going to happen fast. And I said, okay, Commissioner Peirce, I guess that could happen. And you were probably, by my estimation, like twice as right as I probably would have assumed at the time, because things happen pretty quickly in terms of some changes. The meme coin kind of write-up was not on my radar, nor was some of the other stuff that came out. So in terms of looking back, then in terms of turning the calendar year, now you have Chair Atkins here, 1 to 10, how confident is Commissioner Peirce feeling about these changes continuing at that pace?
Well, I mean, we're trying to move as quickly as we can. I think this is really an important thing for me to get things done quickly, but also, it's something that the administration more generally is interested in moving forward quickly. Some things are harder than others. Some things just take more work. There's some things I wish were already done that aren't.
What are those, by the way, in terms of?
I mean, there are other things that I think we can be carving out that I'd like to do more quickly, but there are processes, there are things that you have to do to get that done. The rulemaking, I'd like to see that done with a snap of a finger, and some of that is going to require, as it should, getting the input through a formal process of notice and comment. But, it would be nice to have some of that done more quickly. I'd love to have a safe harbor in place already, because I think it would get disclosures out there, which is what we really want to do. And I think that would be very helpful for everyone involved.
Well, I don't want to like project what I think I understand about all of the conversations we've had over the years, but it does truly seem like we're on a bit of a precipice in terms of, for so long, builders in the US were afraid of offering any sort of like real value when it comes to crypto. And now it seems like finally we are there in maybe that doesn't need to be the case anymore.
Well, and that's what I really do want to flip that, so that we're encouraging people who are offering real value instead of making it, it seems like before, if you were offering something of real value, you were more worried about getting hauled into the SEC for an enforcement discussion. Now I would like to flip that, so it really encourages people to pour their talents into building things that are useful, and that people that meet an actual need. Too much of what I was hearing before is we are designing things not to meet a need, but to get around the securities laws so that we don't get drawn in, and that just doesn't make sense.
Well, that to me is called, again, maybe this is shifting and now turning into an interview where I'm being interviewed, but I think that to me was kind of why we landed on the co-op model, because it was like, there are two ways you can look at that. And this has been very weird, and it's, again, kind of terrifying to have this conversation with you in the SEC, but at some point, you just lay it all out there. And the idea of hearing people talk about co-ops kind of being in their own thing, that again, through precedent, have been exempt from securities laws if they functionally, at the state level at least, kind of go through certain rules, and there's precedent for that. And the idea of talking to investors who say like, hey, are you doing that because that's a loophole? And that's like so crazy that there's like a part of someone's brain that kind of goes to, you're just getting around this thing. Whereas a normal person who hasn't seen the war on crypto play out over the last few years could kind of functionally understand that there's existing precedent just because that's a thing that has existed for decades and before crypto was even a thing. And so it's very strange to kind of have to defend even kind of building and have to answer like, oh, is this a carve out? Because no, it's just, it was there.
Well, so that's the thing, right? On the one hand, there is this precedent out there that we can build on, and that's what I want to do so that people can figure out if they're not in the securities bucket at all. But I also want to build on the existing securities rules that we have to see if we can adjust them in a way that doesn't compromise our objectives as a securities regulator to allow tokenized things that are tokenized but are in the securities bucket, and to figure out a way to move forward so that people can really make the choice that makes the most sense for what they're trying to achieve. And that might very well be building something that's squarely within the securities laws. So that's where we have to make this come in and register mantra actually work. The come in and register now means come in and talk to us about what's blocking you from registering with us. What are the pain points for you? And that means that I do think we're going to see building that is squarely within the security space. We're also going to see people looking at using existing precedent to say, no, maybe we're not covered by the securities laws, but people will choose whatever makes most sense for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and that clarity is important, I guess, just for kind of decisions, whether they be on founders' parts or investors' parts, to just kind of know. And
it is, I mean, and that's an important point too. You want the person who's buying the thing to understand what protections come with this. Am I protected by the securities framework or not? That's important to know. And then for people who are investing in projects, they want to have the comfort that it's being done in a way that's legal and consistent with all of the appropriate federal and state laws.
Well, you were speaking on Friday. I really like the idea of tying it back. You always have a way to kind of create metaphors for what this has been that is very accurate. The last one is the floor is lava, the child's game that you used to kind of reference how this has all felt for crypto founders. And speaking as one, I think you hit the nail on the head. But in terms of those wins, short-term, long-term, I always like asking you this because what are the things that you see over the next few months that you think can get done that's going to be most important for you in that time frame? Because it has moved quick. But I feel like I always get the sense from you whenever we have these interviews that it's not as fast as you want it to.
Yeah, I always want it to go faster. No, I mean, I think more sort of carving out where we can, because I think that can be helpful for some activities. People have questions. Is this going to pull me in? And then really making some progress on the longer term rulemakings. So can we get a proposal out the door on anything? That would make me happy if we could do that. Again, some of these things really do take a lot of effort and have to go through a lot of hoops because that's the directive that Congress gave us, and that makes sense. They want to make sure we're getting the input we need.
Yeah.
But I think if we can at least start that ball rolling, that'd be helpful. And then just making sure that we can be helpful to Congress when they're thinking about their legislation. That's also a piece of what we're doing, and it's really important because they're trying to move very fast. And so
on that point,
them.
how much of that kind of impacts how you look to do things too? Because for so long it was like, who's in the driver's seat here? But now Congress is having these discussions around not just the stablecoin push, but then also market infrastructure. And so seeing that all kind of play out seems like you would be caught in, or the SEC would be caught in kind of this position of who really wants to lead here? Well,
I don't think so. I mean, Congress is always going to lead because they get to write the law and we implement it.
Sure.
So that I think is great. And they're looking at the questions like, what does it look like for a crypto trading platform to be regulated? Who should be doing that? And that's a better function for them to play, and we can concentrate on the things that are within our jurisdiction. We can concentrate on doing those things. And so I actually think it works out really nicely. We can be doing some of these short-term things, and we can get some of these rulemakings underway, and we can do that in a way that's consistent with the longer-term vision that Congress has.
There are a couple things, too, in terms of, we've chatted about them a few times now, like ETH staking, some other pieces that seem like lower-hanging fruit maybe in terms of Chair Atkins coming in. Is that maybe potentially one of those other pieces that could be a lighter lift?
Are you talking in terms of in connection with ETPs?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I've said I think we should really be open to considering, because there have been from the get-go good arguments for why you'd want to allow that. And so it's, and same with in-kind. So I'm open to that, and I think that that's something that we've signaled we're open to.
I mean, in terms of like Chair Atkins being here now, well, not timing, but just like now he's here. And I think last time we spoke was like, he's not going to hold anything up, But I'm excited to hear what he kind of thinks about this too. And
yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of things to think about, so I don't think the first thing that he's thinking about coming in the door is the nuances of ETPs.
Sure.
But, we'll brief him on these things as well.
Well, I mean, I guess if I could square those points, it was interesting to hear. I don't know if everyone personally got a shout out the way that you did on Friday when he gave his first kind of remarks relating to crypto, but complimented you obviously and all the great work that you've done at the task force already. But I guess projecting that out over what's left of 2025, how that kind of symbolizes things to you in terms of, no, this truly is, and obviously we've heard it being a priority from the White House, but no, this is truly the kind of priority coming from a new chair.
Well, again, I don't know that it's the priority. There are lots of things that he has prioritized. I think he said when he was getting sworn in that this is a priority for him, and so that I take great comfort from that. But I should say, he gave me the shout out, but the shout out really belongs to the Crypto Task Force and to people across the commission. Mm-hmm. Staff across the commission have been working very hard on these crypto issues. And so I think that also is very encouraging to me. For many years, there's been a sense from the commission. We're sitting here on the 10th floor that's where the commissioners sit. There's been a view from the 10th floor going down to the staff on the other floors saying, we don't want this stuff to move forward. And now that's flipped. And you're seeing really enthusiastic engagement from the staff trying to figure out some of these very difficult problems. Mm-hmm. We talked about safe harbor type things, but there are a lot of other difficult problems in each of the divisions that we have to wrestle with and think about. And people are very engaged. And so I think that with a new chairman coming in and signaling that this is really important to him as well, the enthusiasm within the building can only get stronger.
Well, I have to say I wouldn't have known any of this or all the inner workings if I didn't kind of come here myself, and I would just echo all of that because, the chat downstairs was just very much hearing and listening and us kind of trying to say, here's the framework that we've tried to operate legally in within the U.S., and I don't know where it goes from here, but at least it was kind of what is necessary, I think, like you said, to kind of improve the way things have been done before if no one actually wants to talk.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't really lead anywhere good, I don't think.
Yeah, no, we want people to talk to us. And the other thing I should caution is we're working really hard. There are lots of things people want to do. You might have to wait a little bit longer than you want because we are trying to deal with a lot of incoming from a lot of different people. And so, give us the room to do what we need to do. We will be in a better place if people work with us productively to try to get to a good place instead of just trying to say, well, anything goes now, because we still have an enforcement division. And I say that not to harken back to old days. We're trying to write our rules and present our guidance in a manner other than through enforcement, because that's just not an effective way to do things. Mm-hmm. But fraud is still fraud. So, no one should be reading this as an invitation to commit fraud. If we don't have the authority to go after the fraud, then we will find someone else at the federal or state level who does.
Yes, for sure. And I think, that is an issue that is certainly on the table for most or a lot of people in any business, is always not doing that.
Yes,
Crypto no different in terms of...
again, it's pretty obvious in some sense, people come in and sort of they portray crypto as being somehow different, but it's the same as anything else. When something is interesting and a lot of people are focused on it, that's what people use to commit fraud. They put the name crypto on it and they commit the same fraud they would have committed using a different name had it been 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Well, I think, again, our role here, I think, perhaps, is just kind of documenting this. And after you invited us down here, it was exciting to come down to D.C. and come into the SEC building and actually talk about this and be heard. And so I think it speaks to kind of, again, the great work that you guys have done at the Crypto Task Force to even get us here.
Well, I hope others will take me up on that invitation too and come in and have the conversation. And we really want written input too. So, come, if you don't want to come in personally, if you feel uncomfortable, then write into us. But we really are eager to hear from people. And if you think there are things that we should be prioritizing, tell us that. If you think that we're going about things the wrong way, tell us that. This is a group project. It's not, it cannot be a regulator-only project. That's been the problem in the past, is that we've not listened. So we're open to constructive criticism as well.
Well, I mean, structurally, the way that works too. I know you always say that you don't speak for your fellow commissioners, and
Oh, I didn't tell you that. My views are my own views as a commissioner, not necessarily those of the SEC or my fellow commissioners.
see, there you go. We've done this so many times that I know your lines now at this
Right.
point. But functionally the same way for us too as a co-op. And so, I speak for our members who have kind of been there with us through the thick and thin to kind of build this. And I think trying to find projects that are trying to build here in the U.S. and do things, I think, are going to be as important as figuring out a right way to write the rules. And so it's been exciting. And again, thank you for letting us come.
Thanks for coming by, and again, I hope other people do as well, and I hope we can make the U.S. a place where people don't want to avoid anymore, but they actually want to come here. They want to be part of building the regulatory framework, and then they want to be part of using that regulatory framework to build really cool and interesting things.
I think that's what we're up to, but I guess we shall see how this next inning goes. But Commissioner Peirce, thank you as always.
Thanks, Zach. Great to see you.
Appreciate it.